Everybody, this is Dream, and today we've got a big old Saturday main slate for college football. This slate starts at 12 noon. This slate has quite a few big games in it. There's Alabama, Texas, South Carolina, Arkansas, Ohio versus Penn State. Let's see here. Obviously, that's not that big, but it's still there. Iowa State versus Iowa, Houston versus Texas Tech. Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting games in this mix. Missouri versus Kansas State, I think that's a rivalry game. So there's quite a few good games here, and we got a lot of really good players that we can mess with. Just for a reminder on DraftKings, when you put quarterbacks in and stuff, you have S flex and flex, and in flex you can put running backs or wide receivers, and in X flex you can actually put quarterbacks as well. So you could have two quarterbacks, which I usually recommend. I think that's usually when I cash is when I use two quarterbacks. When I don't use two quarterbacks, it's usually a little bit harder. So I've broken these slates down as much as I can. I've got some guys across the spectrum of value that you can utilize in these lineups. You have $6,200 for each guy. So obviously you're gonna need some guys that are lower than that. And I have some. And then of course I have some more expensive guys as well. And so you can build lineups around, and I think I think the slate is big enough that there's plenty of value available and there's plenty of, good players that you're going to be able to maximize. As for the blowout potential in some of these games, like Alabama's up, is a 20-point leader on Texas. Miami's projected to win their game by 25 points, Penn State by 24, Texas A&M by 18, and a couple others, Air Force and Wisconsin by 17, Notre Dame by 20. A lot of kind of games that could get out of hand here, but there are some games like Arkansas and South Carolina at 8 points. You've got the Tennessee versus Pittsburgh at 6 points. Texas Tech Houston is 2 points. And some of these games are going to be pretty high scoring. So the only game that's really doesn't look all that awesome from a scoring perspective is Iowa State, or Iowa and Iowa State. I believe that's Iowa State. And the thing on that is only 39.5 points, whereas the second lowest is over 50 points on the entire slate. So I would say that I'm probably going to try to avoid the Iowa State-Iowa game as much as possible because neither one of those teams are going to have a big scoring game. However, it is going to be a close game. It's one of the tightest games on the slate. It's only Iowa -3. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the quarterbacks overall. So my top quarterback is going to be Bryce Young of Alabama. Obviously, there's risk of this game being blowout, which I probably wouldn't be that surprised if they did, just because of how good Alabama is this year. But he definitely has a lot of big upside, and he still did good last week, even though he, did really good in a huge win or blowout win. He had 46 fantasy points, so he definitely can do that again against Texas. But I think he's a really good option. But actually, let's see here. Then from there, we've got Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, who had 30 points last week. I think he's in a good spot. He also runs the ball a lot. He's got to be considered just because he's been really good, and he's got a really safe floor in this matchup, which is supposed to be kind of tight. So, and it's a high-scoring matchup at that. Then I have Clayton Tune for Houston. Where is he? I'm going to have to find some of these guys. For Houston against Texas Tech, this is a tight game with high scoring potential, and these teams both like to throw the ball around, so I suspect that that's going to be something they're going to try to do. As you can see, he had 34.3 points in week 1, and I think he'll be able to continue that in this type of up-tempo game. I'm just going to have to search for some of these guys. Armstrong, for Virginia against Illinois. They actually throw the ball quite a bit, and so I think that's going to have an advantage in this game. This game particularly is going to be pretty high scoring from what I can tell, and it's very tight, only a 4-point spread. So he's somebody to take into consideration. One of the guys that I really like is KJ Jefferson for Arkansas against South Carolina. Now, obviously, he didn't have as good of a week one as we really hoped he would against Cincinnati, but he still was really good at 32 fantasy points, and he definitely can eclipse that against South Carolina. He's one of the most dynamic players in college football this year, and he has, the passing, and he's got the running, and he's got a kind of a dynamic team around him. We got a couple of running backs with him too that's really good, and some good wide receivers, so he's really fun to watch. Sean Clifford for Penn State is another guy I like. He was pretty good last week as well. This opponent's going to be pretty easy against Ohio, so you do have to be a little bit aware of a blowout risk here, but he is a decent option. And then finally, Haynes King for Texas A&M. This is just a really big plus matchup for him against Appalachian State, and he's had a decent week one, and I think he should be able to have another game like that in this matchup. This game is supposed to be extremely high scoring again. Appalachian State last week was in a huge game with North Carolina, and they scored a lot of points, and it looks like Vegas thinks that this game is going to be kind of like that again. So definitely like him at quarterback. So those are my main guys at quarterback. That's spread across the different price ranges, and I've just got guys spread across all the different price ranges in each of these lists. So let me go ahead and get in the running backs. So the first guy that I like is Allen from Wisconsin against WSU. He's been getting about 15 to 25 carries per game, and when he does that, when he gets in the upper end of that, which he should in a game like this, he tends to score a decent chunk of points, and so I look for him to have 30-point upside in this particular matchup. Another guy I like is Chase Brown for Illinois against Virginia. He probably has the biggest upside on the slate. He also had a really big game last week. I'm not saying that he's going to continue this 40-point, but he's cheap enough that you can, even if he gets 30 points, you still feel pretty good about him. He's definitely going to be useful in this high-scoring game, and he definitely gets some chunky yards. He's a really good running back, one of the better ones in his conference. Deuce Vaughn is a guy from Kansas State that I like against Missouri. He's been remarkably consistent versus good teams, and that's something you want to look for on running backs, especially when they go against good teams. Now, he's not facing a great team this week, obviously, Missouri, but he is facing an SEC team, which is a little bit tougher. But still, he should have a good game here in this particular situation. Then we got Jahmyr Gibbs for Alabama. Now, obviously, this is blowout risk. And he didn't have a big week one, but he's their top running back. And he has a lot of upside in these matchups. I suspect that he'll probably play the entire game if they can keep it, if it stays closer. And he'll get lots of opportunities. Let's see. So then I got Henry Parrish Jr. from Miami. He's obviously in a blowout potential game, but he's playing against another crappy team. And last week he had 14 rushes for 108 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he also got a few receptions as well, and he could score a touchdown that way too. So he's definitely going to get the touches, and the opponent is so weak that you just got to think that he's somebody that's going to be good. Obviously, he's a little bit in a timeshare with Jalen Knighton, but he's also somebody that I would consider because I think both these guys are going to have a field day in this particular matchup. It doesn't look like that. I think that from what I've read, that Knighton will play, even though he's a little probable. But he should be somebody that can get some yards as well in this matchup, and he's a lot cheaper as well. I like both the guys on Miami to have good games. Paris Jones is a guy that I think is in a really good situation for Virginia. He against Illinois. This is going to be a high-scoring game, and this is a guy who gets plenty of touches, and so I suspect that he's going to have opportunities to score points. And he also gets reception touches. I know he just got 2 last game, but I think he's going to probably get more than that in this game because they're going to need to utilize him in that way against the defense. Then I got Chris Tyree for Notre Dame, who really didn't do much in the first week, But he's got a lot of upside. And last week he played Ohio State, and you can kind of forgive that. He's going to get some touches. He's going to be he's going to be the lead back, and he's going against a weak opponent, so he's going to get much better opportunity here to kind of show off. Then we got Christian Turner for Wake Forest. Overall, I think this guy has really good upside in this particular game against Vanderbilt. He'll get enough attempts to make it interesting. However, he's a little bit pricey for what his potential output is. Brad Roberts is another guy I like for Air Force against Colorado. He has good upside in this matchup. It should be, a pretty tight game. And, some of these teams, they like to run the ball more than others, and I think Air Force is one of them. They do expect to, this game to... Air Force could blow this out, I guess, but I really don't see that happening. I think it's a pretty evenly matched game overall. And then, Jabari Small for Tennessee. He has top-tier upside in this matchup against Pittsburgh in a high-scoring game. He's going to get some touches. He's going to get some attempts, reception attempts. And so he definitely has this ability to get more points. And he's also come down on price because last week he didn't really score a ton of points. And then Raheem Sanders is the final guy for Arkansas. This guy is fun to watch. He is a bully at running back, and in a good way. He did really well against Cincinnati. He just didn't get the touchdown that he really needed in order to really break open a fantasy scoring output. But I think he can do it against South Carolina, and I don't know that South Carolina's defense has enough to really slow him down. And, the combination of him with their quarterback, you just like what they have to do. So that's what I have at running back. I think it's a really solid position. There are lots of value, lots of good guys that you can choose from, lots of good matchups and stuff. So let me go ahead and get into wide receivers. So my top guy is Nathaniel Dell, and that was somebody I actually used last week as well. He's still underpriced for what his potential production is. As you can see, he was even higher last week, and of course he did well. He made it worthwhile, but he actually came down a lot in price, and his potential production is just too high. I really like him as an option. The next guy I have is Aeneas Smith for Texas A&M. Doesn't always get the most targets, but he should be a factor in a high-scoring game. And I expect this game to be pretty high-scoring for these two teams. Again, then we have Cedric Tillman, one of the guys that Tennessee's quarterback throws the ball to. Now, he had a little underwhelming game in the week one, and his price came down a little bit because of it. But I suspect that he's going to make up for it in this game against Pittsburgh because it's going to be high-scoring. And then we've got Mitchell Tinsley for Penn State. He's a nice value guy. He had a good week in week one, 7 attempts, 84 yards, and a touchdown. I think he can do something similar against Ohio. He can probably get more attempts, actually. And he should also get some other points in other ways, like catching a ball and stuff like that. Even though he didn't do it in week one, I think he will this week. Keaton Thompson is a guy from Virginia I like against Illinois. Top tier wide receiver here on the slate and has a soft week one. And he's he's got good in the scoring. He's got a good scoring game to get at it. So what I mean by that is he didn't quite perform first week, but he'll come back and he'll probably get more touches in this game because it's a little bit easier defense and stuff like that. Then I have Donovan Green for Wake Forest against Vanderbilt. He didn't have a big week in week one, but he's in a very good matchup, and he's going to have some good opportunities here. And, obviously you got to have some value guys, and I'm just trying to find guys that are in situations where they're going to get opportunity. Xavier Restrepo for Miami against his weak opponent. He's going to have opportunity to show out and get lots of fantasy points, and I think he will. I also have Trayshawn Holden for Alabama here against Texas. He had a really good week one. He has a solid option, and he likely will get a touchdown or two opportunities in this game. Then we have, finally, last but not least, Jerron Bradley for Texas Tech against Houston. And honestly, like the Texas Tech players and the Houston players all seem valuable for the most part, all the top couple guys. But he's the top one, $5,000 too, which is nice, and he's got a lot of upside in this game. So I think that there's really a lot of value between all these games. Get a lot of value. I don't know what that means. Uh, sorry, get a little tongue twisted when I'm talking through these things. But anyhow, I think this is a really good slate. I think it's a fun slate. There are a lot of good games in this particular slate. Obviously, it does start at noon, so it's going to go most of the day, all the way through 4 p.m.'s start time on the last game. But yeah, there's a lot of good teams and a lot of good players available here, so I think you can make some really quality lineups. Let me know in the comments below if you think that I left somebody out that you think is good. Feel free to ask me any questions, comments, or ideas down below. Also, join the Discord if you like. We talk about whatever sports is going on. It's time, and have a nice day, guys.